I am Louise Palanker, and this is Quarantainment. I come to you today from in front of a bookcase. You've seen so many correspondents, pundits, journalists, politicians coming to you from in front of their bookcase, and you focus very hard on the titles of the books behind their head. But do they talk to you about them? They do not. I will talk to you about my books. Now, I am a devoted ebook reader. I was an early Kindle adopter, and I found that it really suited me because I could just sit in the dark and read. With good old-fashioned physical books, there were so many excuses not to read. You could say, well, I don't have the book, or I don't have a light bulb. But now, you can just lay in the dark in the soft glow of your iPad and read. And one of the huge pluses for me is that there's always a bookstore available to you. I just love browsing and reading titles and reading reviews and being able to have a book with the tap of a finger. But before this marvelous innovation, I was already a huge reader. I have been since childhood. I would often tend to give books away, but the books that I would hold on to were the books that meant the most to me. And I'm a huge fan of celebrity biographies. So let's take a look at what I have. This is a book about Jack Benny written by his daughter Joan. It's wonderful. This is one of the greatest books of all time. It's called Little Gloria, Happy at Last. It's about Gloria Vanderbilt and what they called at that time the trial of the century, even though the century had only just begun. So there was a custody battle for little Gloria. She was 10 years old. And then from there, she goes on to invent genes and give birth to Anderson Cooper. A life well lived. In the arena of celebrity books, Mia Farrow may be the finest writer. This book is really, really good. Gracie, a love story by George Burns. Highly recommended. This is Four Boys and a Guitar by my friend Douglas Friedman. He wrote this book about the Mills Brothers. Read it. Here's a book about Judy Garland by Lorna Luft, her daughter. It's called Me and My Shadows. I really love it. I read everything about Motown. This book by Smokey is the most complimentary of Berry Gordy because they were buddies. Other books like Dreamgirl, My Life is Supreme, and the Ottis book, I have that. The Otis Williams book reveal a little bit more of the rough edges around Berry Gordy. And this book went on to inspire the current Broadway production, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which is amazing. Here's a book I sent away for on eBay. Steps in Time by Fred Astaire. Wonderful. Okay, here come my 3 favorite celebrity biographies of all time. Not just entertaining, also illuminating and instructional. Born Standing Up by Steve Martin. You must read this. Enter Talking by Joan Rivers. Absolutely mandatory for anyone pursuing a career in stand-up comedy. This is a Bible. And for humans of all kind, Carol Burnett's One More Time. She writes about her Hollywood childhood, growing up in a one-room apartment with her grandmother, walking up to Hollywood Boulevard to see all of the movies and look at all the premieres and dream about one day becoming a star. They had nothing. They had zero money. Her parents were mentally ill and alcoholic, and there were all kinds of challenges, but she was Carol Burnett, so she went on and she did it. This book is absolutely stellar. Read it. Here's my dad and his sister Doris and his brother Bernie. I've got some Bobble Beetles, an internet troll. Here's my dad at boot camp. He went on to fight on the front lines of World War II, the Normandy invasion, the Battle of the Bulge. He's a world saver. And this pair was brought to me from Australia by Henry Winkler. And this is from Fritz's play. Fritz Coleman, who's my buddy, and I produced the play. It's directed by Richard Klein, who played Larry on Three's Company and is a wonderful director. We started at the Victory Theater in Burbank and wound up taking this play all around California for a couple of years, winding up at the Hermosa Beach Playhouse for a couple of weeks. And I remember that we ate dinner at a crepe restaurant nearby. I gained 10 pounds. Mental note, eating crepes is like eating dessert for dinner. It is not meant to be done daily, unless you have no car and live on top of a French Alp. My buddy Fritz Coleman has been watching a lot of Turner Classic Movies. Fritz is a renowned weathercaster, humorist, comedian, and we're both obsessed with old Hollywood. We read a lot of celebrity biographies, and He recently rewatched Splendor in the Grass, starring Natalie Wood and Warren Beatty, which I had never seen. So we watched it last night, and I'm not sure what it's about, other than teenagers driven mad by abstinence. They could have tried pleasuring themselves, but I'm no doctor. Oh, look, it's Fritz. Fritz Coleman,
Hey,
renowned
hi, sweetheart.
weathercaster and humorist.
I just called to see if you were wearing a mask.
Not in the house. You and I both have our Starbucks addictions, and so there's several layers to retrieving your Starbucks at present.
No, I know. It's a pain.
You have to mobile order, and we got to Starbucks, and there was no desk outside, and I was reluctant to go inside. I had not brought a mask.
I have one right at the corner of my house that's finally opened back up, and it was like a national holiday when I could finally go back there.
One drive-through in Santa Barbara was still open. So you could go through the drive-through, and it was like this long line of caffeine-deprived bubble boys.
It was like the gas lines in the 70s. I have one right near my house, but I refuse to get in that line.
Coffee is a thing you can make at home. It's just that when I had that first Starbucks after not having it for 2 months, it was like, oh my gosh, they're doing something right. And I get that we are a slave to it, but
You were like an alcoholic that fell off the wagon.
Yeah,
Right back into it.
Yeah,
I know. But I've been doing something like going to Priscilla's in Toluca Lake. You know where that is? It's a coffee shop. It's my favorite coffee shop. And I've been trying to support my local retail establishments one or two times a day, and then over tipping them. I just want to keep them solvent. I think they're doing better. Have you noticed the traffic has picked up in businesses in the last week or so? So I think things are getting better.
Now, tell us what you've been doing to broadcast the weather during the pandemic.
Okay. Well, I was the first person that Channel 4 threw out of the building because I'm the oldest person there. And when they realized that vulnerable people shouldn't be coming to the facility anymore, they asked me to stay home. And they sent over this little broadcast kit. I'll slowly move my camera and show it to you. There is the light. There's one of the lights. I have studio lighting right there, and that little tiny HD camera that works on a system that they use in broadcast news now called Live View, which is kind of a sophisticated and compressed cell phone battery system. That's how it gets back to the station. Then there's a plug that goes into the router by my computer. And I do the 5 and 11 o'clock news from this exact seat, with slightly aimed in a different direction by about 45 degrees. I have what's called Team Viewer on my computer, where I can go onto my weather machine at work, my weather computer, build all my maps, create my show, and then actually switch the maps on the air with my space bar at my computer. It's fantastic. I'm a totally self-contained unit. The only problem is when your workspace is 20 feet from your bed, it takes a lot of discipline.
I understand.
It's pretty cool, though. My question is, when this is all over, I think they love the way this business model is working out, because there are 5 or 6 different reporters, some old and some that have medical issues, who are working from home. It looks great. I don't know how much money it saves them, but I think they're probably going to continue to experiment with this model to have fewer people in the building over there. And down the line, smaller buildings.
Well, I think we could cut down on a lot of our footprint, including carbon, including travel, because when you get used to watching Nicole Wallace and Rachel Maddow, who are broadcasting from home, and you don't even notice the difference as long as they are delivering the news that you want to hear, there may be less urgency for everyone to be in the building. That may be staggered, and we may find that traffic and our air are improved by us having gone through this catastrophe.
I think you are 100% right. What I think is this whole situation, and necessity is the mother of invention. This pushed our advancement into technology forward about 10 years. And I think that this may do to the general business population what Amazon did to retail. So you won't have to have so many brick and mortar buildings to house thousands of employees every day. and it will change the whole working landscape.
I think it will help parenting as well,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the burden of that falls on the mother, even when both partners are working. But to be able to have either one working from home for portions of the week, that's emotionally beneficial to the children.
I think it's a fantastic point you bring up. My next door neighbor has 3 children under 10. Also operates her own business out of her house. She's an event planner. So I don't know there's a purple heart big enough to give this woman. But the gift in all this is that fathers get to witness the Bataan Death March that is being a mother all day long to young kids and having to do this, because fathers come home and they save maybe an hour or two of quality time with the youngsters when they get home from work. But now, the quality time loses its quality when it happens from dawn till dusk, 7 days a week for 3 months. So this is reconfiguring the family dynamic a little bit.
Well, one of the little tips that I'm going to give you, because I know that you're someone who loves to send gifts, and you're very generous in terms of that in your life. And so one of the things that I've been doing for my loved ones who have small children at home is I'll go on Amazon and I'll look for books and learning toys, and I'll send them, because I know that this is 100 times more difficult for people who are attempting to homeschool and parent during this crisis.
That's a very thoughtful gift. And then if you could send them several $1,000s worth of daycare so they could get out of the house.
Then I send the parents some alcohol. I don't. All right. So how have you been quarantining yourself, Fritz?
Well, the interesting thing about this is I am a loner. You're a bit of a loner, but you have a big family that you have to deal with, even if you want to be alone. But I'm a loner. I can be alone as much as I want. So this is not a big change from my routine. So it's just given me a chance to sort of think about my life. Going to work in another building for me is really one of the only reasons I leave the house. And so when that is taken away, between working at home, Postmates, Netflix, Amazon, hypothetically, I could go the rest of my life without ever leaving my home, and I'd be perfectly happy. But you know what? I love it. I've done all the work inside my house. I've cleaned every closet. I've had it sterilized, as I told you, with Rego. I've done little projects today. My tree trimmer is out there. My landscaper's doing work. So I'm getting all the busy work done. But here, I have a feeling about this. I don't know if you feel this way about it, because you haven't been going to an office like I have. But, we spend most of our lives going to work to pay for our homes. And then we spend the rest of our day driving to and from the office for another 2 hours. And then when we go on vacation, we leave our home. So in the end, we spend the least amount of time in the area that we spend the most amount of time trying to pay for. So this is forcing people to stay in their homes and bond with their home. And I'm so happy that I'm able to do that, honestly.
Wow, that is a really enlightened way of looking at it.
That was more than you wanted to know, right?
No, I think that's excellent. With this disclaimer, okay, I think that there's, generally speaking, there are, of course, we're all on a scale, but there are introverts and extroverts. And the way it's been explained to me is that introverts replenish by being alone, but with solitude, they are able to refresh. And extroverts need social in order to refresh, which is why you see people just pouring into those bars the second they lift the restrictions, because for them, it's really painful to not be socializing or with other humans. They receive something from it that you and I don't. Of course, we love our friends and family, but you and I can both do very well just hibernating and reading and watching and observing and writing, and knowing that, like, for an hour, I'm going to talk to my mom. That's enough for me, really. On the regular, that's enough for me. It's not enough for a lot of people.
That's an excellent point, Louise. I love that analogy. I mean, if you think about it, our personalities are formed by how other people react to us. We have to have feedback. So somebody that needs a lot of attention is probably going nuts right now. But my feeling is when you're alone, for instance, if a jerk is isolating, is he still a jerk? Maybe he's only a jerk to other people. You know what I mean? How much of your personality gets watered down?
Yeah, it's a tree in the forest. I don't know. I mean, he probably goes online and trolls people.
An anonymous jerk's even worse.
For sure. All right, but you told me that you've been doing a lot of Turner Classic Movies.
Well, you and I love to talk about movies and cultural things, but I am an admitted workaholic. I have spent the last 40 years throwing myself into my weather career plus my comedy career. And there are so many parts of my life that I lament not having paid more attention to. There are many classic books that I should have read when I was a teenager that didn't. I'm trying to catch up on those. And I'm trying to catch up on all these wonderful movies that are, at the top of the pyramid of films in this country that I've never seen before. I never saw Citizen Kane from start to finish. I never saw All About Eve. I never saw any of these. It's not that I never did. I never saw the whole ones because I didn't allow myself enough time to do this. So what I've been doing is going to Turner Classic Movies and the MGM channel, and then online to YouTube and just buying them because you can rent them for $3 for the whole thing. Just going there and trying to catch up, and it's so much fun. Even though the technology is antiquated and it's black and white, there's some really smart writing in these old movies that I really enjoy.
And what's interesting too for people like you and I that grew up watching television is a lot of these films you had caught glimpses of, or you picked up halfway, or your brother turned the channel and you never saw how it ended. And so it's really interesting to watch them and consume them in a quiet room with no other kids screaming or mom yelling that it's your turn to clear the table or whatever. Mm-hmm. You just watch it from beginning to end. And you told me that you had recently watched Splendor in the Grass. So we watched it last night, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Now, this is a title you hear all your life. Mm-hmm. And then you hear these titles, and then yet you have no concept of what is in this film.
No, you're right. And I never even knew before I watched the movie that was a line from a poem that's a pivotal part in the movie. And when you watch that, what I loved, and you always have to look at any kind of culture, like movie or book or television show, within the context of what's occurring in life then. So that was the 60s, and we were rejecting the old ways of our parents and trying to find our own life. And that was a great example of that. So was Rebel Without a Cause that Natalie Wood was also in. But I'll tell you what, not so much Splendor in the Grass, which I love. She was a powerfully charming person on screen, wasn't she?
Can I also make this note? Warren Beatty with pants tucked into his socks, very cute.
I know it. And I guess that was his first film, right? That was his first.
It said introducing on the credits. It said introducing Warren Beatty. Yeah. And did you catch Phyllis Diller?
Yes.
Right?
Just doing Phyllis Diller. She looked like she always does. It was a cool little cameo there.
Adorable.
But I watched that. I watched Citizen Kane. I watched Cleopatra because I read this book about the Mankiewicz brothers, Herman Mankiewicz that wrote Citizen Kane and Joseph Mankiewicz that wrote Cleopatra. And what blew me away about all those movies in particular, but of that era, the 30s and 40s and early 50s, was how smart they were. The dialogue was much smarter than anything they would tolerate today. It was literate. People had long 8-10 minute conversations on screen with words that weren't all that simple sometimes. It was really interesting to see that.
Well, can I make this point? I believe that both scripts and songs had better lyrics. If you think about this,
without question,
because they had less production value to lean on. And so it was really, they were selling sheet music. This had to be poetry. And it's the same with film. If it wasn't on the page, you know, it wasn't on the stage. And so they gave more respect to writers. I think we have writers today who are just as good, but they're not always the ones who are rising to the top because of all the other elements that invite people to go see a film.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. And, you know, you had people like Cole Porter and Irving Berlin. And then in our era, you had Holland Dozier Holland from Motown. You had all these amazing writers. And if you sit and look at some of those lyrics, they give you goosebumps. I think what's missing now in a lot of music, because ballads aren't, I mean, there's some slow music, but it's just the tenderness between like two human beings in a song.
Yeah, if you listen to the lyrics of Alan and Marilyn Bergman,
yeah,
cry every time if you really.
Yeah, I know I sound like an old person, but
no, but it's good stuff. Well, it's not so much that we're old people; it's so much that we encourage people now. Everything's accessible to us. If someone mentions a film title or they mention a song, you can go find it.
Yeah.
And when we were kids, someone would mention something, or you'd read a book about Natalie Wood, and then you'd wait for her movie to appear on TV and maybe catch it, maybe not. But now, once you read the book, you can satisfy that hunger of like seeing all her movies back to back to back. And, you know, I did that with Cary Grant, and I did it with Katharine Hepburn. And,
yeah,
you know, it's really fun to take those deep dives.
Oh, yeah. No, I do that. That's what I did with when I took a deep dive and I just finished. I just came up for air. And one of my friends from NBC is Josh Mankiewicz, who's a correspondent on Dateline. He's a great guy, a very amusing guy. And then his brother, of course, is Ben Mankiewicz on Turner Classic Movies. So I'm watching Turner Classic Movies one night, and then the Mankiewicz name turns a light on in my mind. Oh my God, it's that Mankiewicz. I had no idea. Oh. And they were there talking about this book that was written about Herman, that wrote Citizen Kane, and Joseph, that wrote All About Eve and Cleopatra, this dynasty of amazing writers. And Josh is one of the funniest people I've ever met, and a great writer and a journalist himself. So what I did was, I thought, wow, I'm going to dive into that. So I ended up renting Citizen Kane, and then I rented All About Eve, which was written by Joseph Mankiewicz, and Cleopatra. And then I read this book called The Brothers Mankiewicz. And if you're a Hollywood, I know you love behind the scenes Hollywood stuff. I'm going to give you my copy. It's unbelievable how fun it is, how nasty and backstabbing. And it's amazing any movies got made because they were all spending a lot of their energy trying to figure out how to screw the next guy.
I've already started reading the book. I've got it on my iPad.
Oh, there we go.
Which brother is their dad?
Joseph Mankiewicz is their grandfather. I'm sorry. Herman Mankiewicz is their grandfather.
Okay.
Joseph Mankiewicz was the father of Tom Mankiewicz, that used to be the head of the LA Zoo, and I did fundraising for him. But again, I never connected all these dots until I read the book. But what I loved about, like, the Herman Mankiewicz story, which I think they cover in the book first, was that these guys, they were a part of the Algonquin Round Table, which was this group of really funny, smart people like George S. Kaufman, Dorothy Parker, all these really, and I mean, I would have killed to be an underpaid busboy at the restaurant when these guys were having one of their drunken meetings, because they were all hysterical and talented. Are you having fun with the book?
Yeah, I just started it. I read about their dad, and then now I'm reading about Herman. So I've just started because I had finished a book called Nothing to Envy. Have you heard of this book?
No.
Okay, write down Nothing to Envy. It's about North Korea. Oh. And it's written maybe 10 years ago, and it tracks like 5 or 6 people from North Korea who make it to South Korea. And the author interviews them extensively. So she tells each of their stories, what life in North Korea is like. And it's just wrenching.
Wow. I'll tell you another that you bring up a good point about reading books during quarantine. Rachel Maddow's book, Blowout. Did you read that?
Yes.
Oh, man. It was scary, but interesting about the whole oil industry.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just it's really, really intriguing. One of the points that she makes is that in any kind of society where value is pulled out of the ground, it can be easily funneled through 1 or 2 warlord dictators, and the people don't don't benefit from any of that wealth, and their environment is polluted.
It's especially in the third world nations. I love the African nation that she keeps coming back to,
Yeah.
where all the money that Exxon and our previous Secretary of State were pumping into that country, none of it went to the people. It all went to one guy.
Because it's really easy to arrange that.
Yeah.
If you're such a personality.
It's a bribe. It's just they bought off the emperor of the country.
And so the same thing happens in Africa with diamonds. And so,
yeah.
And she talks about certain states in our United States that are also kind of at the mercy of fracking. You know, the earthquakes.
Yeah.
Suddenly spring up in
Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma, all of a sudden, there's earthquakes.
Yeah, and all of the way that those rich oil barons were able to buy off local politics to make people forget the reality of what was going on there was awful.
Yeah, it's really chilling stuff. All right, any other Quarantainment recommendations before we sign off?
I don't know. I'm just trying to play catch up for those old films. I'm at a stage in my life, and part of it is my age, and part of it is looking back over my career. And I have no regrets about my life. I've been enormously lucky in every aspect of my career. But what I didn't do was allow myself enough time for stuff to creep in from the outside. Movies and books and plays and stuff I wanted to see and I knew I should see just as a citizen, but I didn't allow myself because I was too married to my work. And now I'm trying to play catch up. And I'm enjoying it. I know that my retirement, when it comes, will be awesome because I have a lot of things, a lot of missions I'll be on to do exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and everything that you consume informs your art. So you're going to continue to write and perform one-man shows, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Are you working on one right now?
I am. I've been doing one which is not like a theater piece, not like the thing that you produced with me, but it's for lack of a better term, a single topic monologue about being over 50. And I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years, and I've been having a blast because our group, the boomers and slightly older, really enjoy seeing their lives put into perspective in a humorous way. But I'm working on one now, and I have no idea what form it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to be like a multi-character play or it's going to be a one-person presentation. But I grew up in Philadelphia, and all my life I was addicted to R&B, soul music, Motown, Gamble and Huff, all the Sigma sound, the doo-wop music from Philadelphia was really what drew me in. And then later in my life, I became a big fan of blues. I mean, everything from Howlin' Wolf to Muddy Waters, all those old guys, Freddie King. And I'm investigating why this is so interesting to me, why it resonated to me. I even wrote a little anecdote about the first time I heard a James Brown album. It was like somebody had given me an illicit drug, and I felt guilty, but I felt this insane sense of fascination, and I was so drawn to it. And the question I want to answer in this thing is, how is a person like me who has no cultural connection to where that music was born, poor slavery and post-slavery South, you know, the suffering roots of African-American music, why is that so appealing to me? I'm just a white kid from the suburbs, and the first time I brought an Elvis Presley 45, an RCA 45, a Hound Dog, my father wanted to throw me out of the house. I think that music like Motown with Berry Gordy, who was very cognizant of presentation, making the women look good so that they would be appealing to a white audience, probably did more for race relations than all the politics and all the fighting that was going on, because the black culture worked its way into suburban white American homes through the music. So I'm writing a thing about that. I don't know what it's going to do.
No, it's actually really fascinating. Did you watch the documentary about Berry Gordy? Where it's
about 5 times.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So he figured out what he needed to do, and he was very methodical about it.
plus musical. So he had that magical combination of qualities that made him the perfect man for that time. He didn't always treat his artists the way I believe they should have been treated. But having said that, he was the first African-American owner of a business that was selling to white people in droves. So
that's right. And he had black and white people working for his company.
Yes, he did. And the other thing I wanted to point out about why was a pasty boy like you so drawn to this music? So were the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And the Beatles lived in Liverpool, which was a port city. So sailors would come. I mean, this was, if you got a hold of one of these things, you felt like you had struck gold. If you got a hold of a record. And so this stuff was coming in off the ships, and these guys just were intoxicated by it. So
that's a great point. And the thing about it is that post World War II Liverpool poverty, all those row houses, those guys had more in common with where blues music was coming from than I did.
Good point.
Those guys like Clapton and the Beatles and the Stones and Led Zeppelin introduced American kids to their own art form, which was American blues. That whole thing is fascinating to me as well.
Yeah, that pipeline is really intriguing.
So that's what I'm working on now. At the very least, it's a great mental exercise for me during quarantine.
No, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear that. And I know that your previous play, the one that you were talking about people over 50, that was recorded at a performance and it went viral on YouTube, correct?
Yep. I recorded it at the Conference of Aging in Pasadena, and it's had, I think, almost 6 million views now. And for a long form thing, 40 minutes, and for people that age to click that many times, I was happy with that.
Yeah, so there was a lot of, Kathy, you need to watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
He's talking to us.
I'm having a hot flash.
All right, Fritzy, I enjoyed talking with you so much today.
Oh, I miss our visits, but I'm so glad you gave me this opportunity, and you're a great interviewer and great conversationalist.
I'm a Zoom link away. That's comfort.
All right, sweetie.
All right, love you, honey.
Love you. Have a great day. See you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Towards tomorrow and another